Here's something you probably haven't been taught. A quiet, persistent force can live inside the way you think about yourself. It doesn't shout. It doesn't have to be dramatic. It slips in through old hurts, through the way someone once dismissed you, through habits you learned to survive. If you feel like your energy is being siphoned without a clear source, listen. This message is an attempt to name that pattern and give you steps to begin reclaiming your attention. In certain spiritual and energetic frameworks, people call this an Archon attachment, an echo-like imprint that lodges in the parts of you that learn to doubt, to shrink, or to stay small. Think of it as an uninvited echo that repeats a message you weren't meant to carry. Before we go further, a quick calibration. I'm not presenting a medical diagnosis or a universal metaphysical law. This is a model, a lens that often maps onto real emotional habits and relational dynamics. If anything here resonates strongly and interferes with your life, professional support is a valid addition to any inner work you do. With that caveat, here are the 3 signs to look for, exactly 3, each with a short scene, a clear diagnostic clue, and an immediate practice you can try right now. If this resonates, hit like and subscribe so you don't miss the follow-up on clearing steps. You didn't get here by accident. Attachments like this usually arrive through familiar doors, a string of critical relationships, a childhood wound that was never soothed, unguided spiritual searching that skips grounding, or a perfectionism that rewards you for being small. They thrive where vulnerability was met with minimization, where your attempts to be seen were met with shame, where you learned to manage survival by lowering your voice. These are the gateways, small openings that compound over time. Now, how do you actually spot it? Look for these 3 signs. 1. Excessive, disproportionate self-criticism. You know the voice. It doesn't just offer useful feedback. It lampoons you in ways that are out of proportion with reality. You miss one deadline, and it tells you you're incompetent. You try something new, and it predicts catastrophic failure in vivid detail. The tone is contemptuous or unrelenting, and it shows up at times when neither your environment nor the facts justify such intensity. Imagine this microscene. You send a draft email to a client. There's no mistake in the email, but an hour later you find yourself scrolling back to it, reading the same sentence dozens of times, and every pass writes a harsher judgment in your head. You're sloppy. Why did you even try? The client replies with, "Looks good," and still the inner critic keeps narrating defeat. That mismatch, the external calm and the inner storm, is the clue. Ordinary self-correction helps you improve. This kind of inner tirade keeps you small and exhausted. How to notice it? Catch the volume. Ask, is this reaction proportional to what actually happened? If it's not proportional, the model suggests you might be listening to an heard but not truthful echo. A short practice you can do right now. Breathe 3 slow, even breaths. On the next exhale, name the voice out loud or in your mind. That's the critic. It's not me entirely. Then ask one question: where did this voice first show up? Don't push for an answer beyond the first image that rises. That first image often points to the original diminisher. Naming reduces the voice's assumed authority. Over time, asking that origin question trains you to pause before you obey every internal accusation. 2. Replaying past humiliations and conversation loops on repeat. This sign looks like a mental stage that keeps replaying certain scenes, embarrassing conversations, old rejections, an argument at a family dinner, over and over, as if your mind were trying to solve a problem that doesn't have a new solution. You can be hours or days away from the event and still feel the emotional intensity as though it were present tense. The loop tends to replay the worst interpretation and often hands you the same conclusion. You were at fault. You deserved it. You'll always be that way. Picture a simple evening. You're washing dishes and suddenly you're back at 15. A voice from the past telling you you were silly for speaking up. You replay the exact phrasing, the inflection, the way someone turned away. The memory feels fresh, the shame feels new. That loop is energetic fuel. It keeps anger, guilt, humiliation, or numbness alive in your system, and the longer it runs, the more it drains your attention and emotional bandwidth. How to discern it from ordinary rumination. Check the loop's purpose. Is your mind trying to solve a practical problem, like, what can I do next? Or is it simply refeeding an old hurt with the same verdict? If it's the latter, the loop is doing no productive work. It's composting the past into ongoing pain. A micro-practice to interrupt it. When you notice the loop, stop and give yourself the sentence you needed back then. You don't have to make a speech, just one line. For example, you weren't wrong to speak up, or you were doing your best. Say it out loud if you can, or place your hand on your chest and whisper it. This simple corrective phrase begins to rewrite the emotional soundtrack attached to the memory. Then do one small physical shift. Stand up, open a window, or change rooms. A tiny change in your environment helps break the repetitive circuit. 3. Persistent, low-level attention drain and mental noise. This is subtler. It's not the dramatic anxiety that announces itself. It's a constant fog of distraction, a background hum that eats at your focus. You start a task and 10 minutes later your attention has evaporated into social feeds, random chores, or an inner tale about how you should be doing something else. It's not laziness. It's the sensation that your mental real estate has been colonized by chatter that isn't serving you. Scene. You sit down to write or create and find yourself checking email, then social media, then a recipe you didn't plan to make. 2 hours disappear and you have no idea where the time went. When you try to concentrate, a string of intrusive messages nudges you. You'll fail. You don't deserve this. You'll look silly. And these small intrusions keep multiplying, making sustained attention feel impossible. In energetic models, this is described as attention being siphoned. Your focus is being recycled into the attachment's loops. How to tell it apart from normal distraction? Notice the pattern across contexts. If this fog shows up consistently even in activities you care about, and it brings with it the same undermining messages, it may indicate an attachment-like pattern rather than mere procrastination. A reclaiming practice. Claim a sliver of mental real estate. Place both feet on the floor. Take 3 grounding breaths. Name one micro-task you will complete without checking anything else. Just one, very small. It can be a paragraph, a single phone call, or 5 minutes of free writing. Set a visible marker, a sticky note that says one thing, and do it. When intrusive thoughts come, label them. That's the siphon. Then return to your one small task. Repeating this tiny victory reconditions your attention muscles and deprives the brain of its oxygen. Those are the 3 signs: an excessive inner critic, replaying loops of humiliation, and a persistent attention siphon. If you're recognizing 2 or more, this model suggests you're more likely dealing with an attachment-like imprint than simple stress or a bad week. But remember, it's a model. Observe with curiosity, not judgment. Now, where does the energy come from that keeps this echo alive? 2 sources: old wounds that weren't resolved and current relational dynamics that unconsciously benefit from your staying small. Think about the people who were present when the voice first formed. The original diminisher could be a parent, a teacher, an early partner. Their words lodged in your system as a pattern. Decades later, different people, friends, partners, co-workers, may be echoing the same dynamic, sometimes intentionally, often not. A subtle drainer is someone who perks up when you apologize too fast, who leans into your insecurity because it makes them look better, or who pressures you to stay available at the cost of your boundaries. Ask, who benefits when I stay insecure? The answer will often point to whether a relationship is feeding the pattern. But influence isn't always interpersonal. Environments, work cultures that reward overwork, spiritual circles that confuse obedience with smallness, social media that monetizes your shame, also keep attachments oxygenated. These are slow processes. Shame economies and attention economies both profit from your distraction and self-doubt. That's why the remedy is both internal and situational. What weakens an attachment? Not a single dramatic move, but small, consistent reclamations of your integrity and attention. Here's a practical path to dismantle the echo over time, built from simple, repeatable acts. Start with integrity. Choose one tiny promise to yourself and keep it. Not a sweeping vow, a micro-commitment. For example, I will write 2 paragraphs today, or I will not reply to work messages between 8 and 9 p.m. Integrity repairs the trust between you and your own will. Each fulfilled commitment marginally strengthens your interior governance and reduces the attachment's capacity to speak for you. Next, practice naming and interrogating intrusive thoughts. When an accusation arises, you always mess up. Ask it 2 short questions. Is this absolutely true? And what evidence says otherwise? Then ask, who first taught me this line? These queries are gentle but effective. They introduce skepticism at the point of automaticity. The attachment depends on your unquestioned belief in its narration. Once you interrogate it selectively, the voice loses credibility. Boundaries are essential. Learn to say 1 small no per week to people or requests that cost you attention or joy. Boundaries are not punishments. They are containers for your focus. If someone benefits from your caretaking in ways that keep you diminished, a polite but firm boundary disrupts that benefit structure and robs the attachment of one of its main fuels. You don't have to explain everything. I can't take that on right now, is a complete sentence. Self-compassion is not indulgence, it's strategy. Replace borrowed condemnations with the sentence you needed to hear. If your inner critic says, "You were a failure," answer with a practiced line like, "I was doing what I could with what I had." Repeat it until it starts to sound more plausible. This isn't about delusion, it's about accessibility. You cannot reason your way out of an emotional habit that's been reinforced for years. You must build a counter-habit, language that soothes and re-anchors the body. Micro-habits make the work plausible. Some examples: a morning check-in, where you list 1 tiny thing you're proud of. A 5-minute midday grounding ritual, where you place a hand on your heart and breathe. A weekly no-tech hour that trains attention. These additions accumulate into a larger resistance against the siphon. There are also direct exercises to reclaim the voice. Here are 3 you can practice, 1 aligned to each sign. They are brief, portable, and meant to be repeated. For the inner critic, listen for the voice and verbally label it. When you hear "you're not enough," respond, "Thank you for your concern, I will take that under advisement." Then shift your posture, sit taller, open your chest. The critic hates being seen and labeled. Repetition teaches your nervous system that you are the one in authority. For the looping memory, create an alternative ending. Close your eyes and imagine the scene playing out again, but this time you supply the sentence you needed then, an empowering corrective line. Repeat it until the old shame fades to background noise. You are not erasing the past. You are changing the emotional association. For attention drain, identify 1 5-minute timerless task and commit. When distraction appears, say, "Not now," and return. Each successful return is a small victory. Keep a tally. Over days, those tallies reconstruct your capacity to focus. A psychological pivot is crucial. At a certain point, you must begin to recognize the voice as not entirely yours. That recognition is not an act of dissociation. It is an act of discernment. Imagine you own a house and there's a persistent echo in one room. The echo is not the house. It is a pattern lodged in the plaster. You don't throw away the house. You inspect the wall, you open the window, you change the furniture. Naming the voice, the echo, the loop, the siphon gives you a practical handle. When you say, "That's the echo again," you create enough distance to choose your response rather than reflexively obey. There's one last trick these attachments use at the endgame. Isolation. They whisper that growth will cost you friends, that asserting yourself will make you lonely, that your boundaries will reveal you as selfish. This whisper often becomes a self-fulfilling fear because as you shift, relationships that were stable when you remained small may fray. That's not necessarily a loss. Sometimes it's a necessary culling. If someone's existence depended on you staying diminished, the relationship's end can be a sign of progress, not failure. Reframe losing people who needed you small as a recalibration. When you stop performing the role that kept you punished, you create space for relationships that respect your wholeness. New people may not appear immediately, and that can feel frightening, but solitude can also be a laboratory for new internal rules. It's safer to be alone than to be repeatedly diminished. You are not broken because the old network shifts around your growth. You are being interrupted by a bigger truth. You do not have to carry someone else's verdicts forever. If you're worried about mixing this model with clinical concerns, remember, patterns that look like attachment may show up alongside anxiety or depression. If your symptoms are severe, persistent low mood, suicidal thinking, or functional impairment, please include appropriate professional care. Inner work and energetic frameworks often complement clinical treatment, but they do not replace it. If you're asking, where do I begin? Start with one small promise and the naming practice. Keep it tiny so you cannot avoid it. Integrity builds momentum. 2 minutes each day of consistent corrective speech to yourself. One sentence of compassion, one refusal to replay a memory, one completed microtask will compound. The goal is not perfection, it's incremental reoccupation of your mind. You might also consider practical environmental hygiene. Reduce exposure to accounts and conversations that profit from your self-critique, curate spaces that affirm your dignity, and limit people-pleasing in small, measurable ways. See boundaries, not as confrontations, but as the polite architecture of a life that values your time and attention. Let me leave you with a short guided anchor you can return to at any moment. Place a hand on your chest. Take 3 steady breaths. Whisper the sentence you needed as a child. Whatever that is for you, you were enough. You did the best you could. You deserve to be seen. Breathe that sentence into your body as if you were delivering oxygen to a part that's been starved. Do this whenever the old voice rises. It's simple, but simple is often the most powerful medicine. You were interrupted, not broken. The pattern you're seeing is not proof of failure. It's evidence of a survival strategy that has outlived its usefulness. Recognition is the opening move. Reclamation is the daily, earnest choreography of small commitments, naming, boundary setting, tiny acts of integrity. Over time, the echo loses its volume. Your attention returns. You learn to sit in your own house without the old voice narrating every room. If this helped, comment which sign you noticed and share this with someone who might be stuck in the loop. Check the description for a short worksheet that walks you through the 3 micro-practices and a guided prompt to identify a single promise you can keep this week. You don't have to do everything today. Just begin with one tiny, steady act that says, "I will have my attention back."